Okay, the next item of business is a statement by Natalie Dawn-Innes on Scotland's secure accommodation capacity. The Minister will take questions at the end of her statement, so there should be no interventions or interruptions. And I call on Natalie Dawn-Innes, Minister, around 10 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and thank you for the opportunity to address this important issue regarding Scotland's secure accommodation capacity. As Minister for Children, Young People and the Promise, I recognise and value the critical role that secure care services play in safeguarding our most vulnerable children. The Chamber will remember when the Care and Justice Bill passed in April that Parliament voted to enshrine in law age-appropriate care and justice for vulnerable young people across the country. As part of wider work to further advance our commitment to children's rights and embed the promise, the bill, which became an act on the 4th of June, importantly ensures children are kept out of prison and young offenders' institutions, with secure accommodation being the normal place of detention instead. Secure accommodation services are the most intensive, restrictive and specialised form of childcare in Scotland. They are highly regulated and high-cost services. Secure accommodation is designed to meet the needs of a small number of children in Scotland who need to be deprived of their liberty to keep them or others safe. Sufficient secure provision to meet Scotland's needs is therefore imperative. The number of vacant places in secure accommodation fluctuates and is monitored closely. This morning there were 3 places available in secure accommodation in Scotland. Now, this is not unprecedented because the needs of children in secure care can be complex, often requiring multiple interventions, such as the use of multiple secure accommodation beds when a child's needs are too complex to be managed within a single space. Capacity, therefore, can shift daily. Whilst this provides only a small margin, smaller than we would wish, it is vital that members recognise redundant over-provision would run contrary to keeping the promise and would be intolerably expensive. There are therefore challenges within and around secure care, and I am here today to be transparent to Parliament and assure members that the Government is fully committed to taking action to address these challenges. And in this statement, I will describe how we are doing so. Secure accommodation is not just about providing a safe place to stay. Providers work to understand and address the root causes of each young person's behaviour and needs. They provide each child with the essential, specialist and tailored care and support they need to promote positive outcomes. Secure accommodation is a demand-led service which is provided by 4 independent charitable organisations in Scotland. It is highly regulated and subject to regular inspections by both the Care Inspectorate and His Majesty's Inspectorate of Education. As I said at the outset of my statement, the Children Care and Justice Act saw Scotland take a major step forward to keep the promise. Prior to these reforms, children in conflict with the law could be placed in young offenders' institutions. Careful planning, additional resourcing and intensive preparations meant that we could introduce these reforms less than 3 months after the Act received royal assent. Implementing this reform at pace has been an enormous collaborative effort, and it's with thanks to our secure care providers and our wider partners that I can proudly say that Scotland is a country that does not imprison children. However, the profile and focus around this landmark legislation has brought into sharp focus some long-standing challenges around the provision of and access to secure care, and these need to be addressed to enable sustainability and resilience, particularly as demand fluctuates in these early post-commencement stages. Presiding Officer, I want to set out the actions the Government is taking, but first let me provide some context. Today's tight occupancy position is not unprecedented. There has always been pressure on secure care capacity due to the need for high occupancy levels to maintain viability. And I want to reassure Parliament and the public that the Scottish Government is already addressing capacity. In recent years, we've seen a steady overall decline in the number of secure care placements required in Scotland, from an average of 74 children in secure in 21 to 22 to 59 in 22 to 23. And that reduction in overall demand has opened up the opportunity and capacity for reforms. However, in recent months, the position has been affected by the small increase in remand and sentenced children placed in secure accommodation, rather than young offenders' institutions. On average, in 2022 to 23, there were 9 under-18s in Pullman Young Offenders Institution. St Mary's Kenmure in Bishop Briggs was served an improvement notice by the Care Inspectorate following its inspection in October, which triggered a pause on new admissions. And I was deeply concerned about this development, and Government has been kept updated regularly on the progress of the Care Inspectorate's review. It's right that admissions were paused whilst work was undertaken to make the required improvements. That pause has displaced demand to the other 3 centres and has reduced the overall availability of beds across Scotland over recent months. Following the Care Inspectorate's visit to the centre on the 18th of December, the Care Inspectorate were satisfied that progress has been made and agreed to lift the pause on new admissions. Some areas still require further work, so the Care Inspectorate have agreed the maximum capacity should be capped at 12. Now, this pre-Christmas progress is welcome and has increased the capacity within the secure estate by 4 beds. It's my hope that St Mary's will continue to make the required improvements as set out by the Care Inspectorate as soon as possible. Of course, secure capacity is not just about numbers of vacant beds, it's also about quality. We must ensure that children and young people receive the highest quality of care in environments where their welfare is prioritised. A secure capacity contingency plan has recently been developed in collaboration with COSLA, Social Work Scotland and the Care Inspectorate. This plan is designed not just to manage the current challenges, but to strengthen our secure accommodation system for the future. In terms of short-term actions, one of the immediate actions has been for the Care Inspectorate to update the current secure care admission guidance to provide greater flexibility in respect of the protocol for the use of the 4 emergency bedrooms. This allows secure care providers the flexibility to make decisions over its use to provide relief in emergency situations when, for example, its use is required for a live situation or to allow a child to be safely cared for temporarily until the place becomes available. We're working closely with secure care providers and other stakeholders to establish a clear agreement on the minimum vacant secure care capacity requirements for Scotland overall at any given time. We're also exploring the potential urgent establishment of a new national contingency resource. Consideration is being given to opportunities to repurpose some elements of the existing secure accommodation estate on at least one site, and that would provide additional capacity in the system. And we will update Parliament on that as soon as possible. We're also in the process of finalising a memorandum of understanding with centres and other partners. That will set out a clear codification of responsibilities as well as a robust protocol for managing issues relating to the most complex secure care placements. Secure care, as members know, should only ever be used when absolutely necessary. Contingency actions are also focusing on high-intensity wraparound services, including identifying and enabling effective alternatives to secure care, such as health interventions which focus on diverting individuals with certain mental health needs into appropriate settings. Funding of up to £7 million is also being made available by the Scottish Government to cover the placements of sentenced and remanded children this financial year. The Government has committed to maintaining this funding in 25-26, which is of course subject to parliamentary approval this year. The Government also continues to pay for up to 16 beds across the secure estate. This is to maintain capacity for children placed by the courts and to provide a level of financial security to the secure providers. This intervention has been effective in driving down reliance on cross-border placements, which are down to 10 from 19 last January. And in addition, £500,000 funding was offered last summer to secure providers to support their preparations for the movement of children from young offenders institutions into secure care. In the medium to long term, we are committed to developing a more resilient and responsive system of secure care provision, capacity preservation and placement management. We commissioned Strathclyde University's Children and Young People Centre for Justice to consider the future needs of children in or on the edges of secure care, which resulted in the publication of the Reimagining Secure Care report on the 27th of September. Our aim is to provide a more detailed response to the Reimagining report late in spring. To do this, we are engaging with a range of stakeholders, including a roundtable discussion with chairs and heads of all 4 secure care centres, which took place in late November. Meantime, focused fortnightly post-commencement meetings are held with Care and Justice partners. Regular contingency action meetings continue with COSLA, Social Work Scotland and the Care Inspectorate. Going forward, we will continue with our work to keep the promise and ensure our care and justice services for children are informed by the views, rights and needs of our children. I look forward to setting out a vision for the Promise Bill in the weeks ahead and to working with colleagues across this chamber to make sure we uphold the promise each of us made 5 years ago. I hope today's statement will have provided reassurance to members that secure care capacity and delivery is of the utmost importance for the Scottish Government. We're continually monitoring capacity and have structures in place to ensure demand is met. However, I hope it's clear from what I've said that we're committed to making the system more adaptable and more robust in the year ahead. Given this is a complex and shifting issue, I am aware members will have further questions or clarifications, and I'm happy to answer those now. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Minister. The Minister will now take questions on the issues raised in her statement. I intend to allow around 20 minutes for that, after which we'll need to move on to the next item of business, and I would encourage members who wish to ask a question who haven't already done so to press the request to speak buttons. I call first Ros McCall.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer, and Happy New Year to everyone in the Chamber. I thank the Minister for advanced sight of her statement. During the passage of the Children, Care and Justice Bill last year, my party were consistently warning the Scottish Government that capacity in Scotland's secure accommodation provision would be a significant barrier to delivering the aims of the bill. And actually, in 22-23, the admissions to secure care increased by 3%. And unfortunately, this afternoon, the Government appears to have fallen at the first hurdle, and we have a situation where the need for sufficient secure provision is now in question. Whilst the Secure Capacity Contingency Plan is welcome, it comes with huge additional challenges. So can the Minister confirm to the Chamber today that the greater flexibility in respect to the use of the 4 emergency bedrooms in the secure accommodation centres will be sufficient to prioritise the welfare for all? Secondly, I appreciate that there needs to be a medium to long-term action to create a more resilient system. But can the Minister confirm what preventative support is being provided to those leaving secure accommodation, the wider community and their families to prevent secure accommodation return in the future? And finally, one of the Scottish Conservatives' key concerns was the need for adequate support for key agencies. This is still a concern, so what will the Minister be doing to rectify this? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, and thank Ros McCall for her questions. There was quite a lot in there. I don't necessarily agree with the stance of we've fallen at the first hurdle. In terms of the Care and Justice Act, I stood up here and I said that we will continue to ensure that capacity is available. And there was a lot of planning, there was a lot of safeguards in place before commencing the provisions of that Act. There was a lot of engagement that took place between the secure providers, the Scottish Prison Service, Scottish Courts, Police Scotland, Social Work Scotland, so that we were in a place that was ready for this to be enacted. The situation at St Mary's, as I've said, I was deeply disappointed, but that has exacerbated this issue. But I hope that I've given assurances in my statement about the actions that were taken to resolve this. In terms of the standards that children and young people are expected after secure care, that is contained in the Secure Care Pathways and Standards, and there are standards that all young people can expect. The member also asked about the 4 beds. I don't expect that to solve all the problems, but as I said in my statement, that is one of a number of measures that we are taking to try to solve the issues with capacity. If there's anything that I've not touched on there, I'm more than happy to follow up with the member afterwards.
Martin Whitfield.
I'm very grateful, Deputy Presiding Officer, and can I thank the Minister for the statement, which was requested before Christmas recess with an assurance that there wasn't going to be a capacity issue over the Christmas recess period. During that time, there was on average only 1 bed available, and the Minister talked about 3 beds being available this morning. There are, in fact, only 2 beds available at the moment, and there are no emergency beds available, so the capacity is only 2. There are clearly huge capacities, and there is a great concern that young people placed in secure accommodation on care and welfare basis are possibly being rushed out to create space and to facilitate the flexibility that's being talked about before it's safe to do so. So can the Scottish Government reassure the people of Scotland, but actually more importantly, the young people who are caught up in this system, that on no occasion is someone rushed out of secure accommodation to make provision for a more serious case as perceived by those that are deciding who goes where?
Minister.
I can absolutely give that assurance. There has been, given the situation before Christmas, as I said, this was something that received a lot of attention. That problem has now been alleviated. As I said in my statement, there are 3 beds available across Scotland. What I would say to the member is that every effort is made in terms of the shift in capacity in secure care. As I said in my statement, this can happen on a daily basis, and this happens with the heads of secure care centres and other organisations engaging with each other and discussing the best interests of the child. So I would just really reassure Mr Whitfield that this is not the case, and the best interests of the child are at the heart of every decision that is made in relation to placements in secure care.
Thank you. Audrey Nicholl, to be followed by Liam Kerr.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I'm grateful to the Minister for her helpful statement. Can I ask the Minister how the situation in Scotland currently compares with elsewhere in the UK?
Minister.
Absolutely. This is something that is we're faced with across the UK. It's well known that placements across the rest of the UK are volatile, with children often placed in secure accommodation in Scotland due to the limited availability of placements in England and Wales. And this is something that I understand the UK Government are currently working on as per their recently announced Children's Wellbeing and School Bill. Officials are in regular contact with the UK Government counterparts, and that engagement will continue.
Liam Kerr, to be followed by Rona Mackay.
Very grateful. It's good that the Care Inspectorate is satisfied with improvements at St Mary's Kenmure, but the original report highlighted, I think, dangerously low levels of staffing there. So what is the Minister doing proactively to ensure staffing levels are and remain appropriate across the whole estate? Minister.
As I kind of laid out in my statement, and again to other members' questions, we are regularly engaging with St Mary's. Engagement with St Mary's continued throughout over Christmas and prior to the period where the restrictions were in place. And, as I said, the Care Inspectorate are satisfied that St Mary's have made the appropriate improvements to allow additional capacity and to allow children to be placed in St Mary's. I'll continue my engagement with both St Mary's and the other centres to ensure that staffing and any other problems that they may raise with me are continued to be monitored and actioned.
Rona Mackay, to be followed by Pauline McNeill.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I welcome the Minister's statement and reassurance about the current capacity in the system. Can I ask what plans the Government has for increasing the capacity of secure accommodation, and how do they plan on meeting increasing demand in the future?
Minister.
So, as set out in my statement, through a new secure care contingency plan developed in collaboration with COSLA, Social Work Scotland and the Care Inspectorate, we are tackling this issue head-on. The contingency plan is designed not just to manage the current challenges, but to strengthen the secure care system and accommodation for the future. I set out some of the immediate actions we're taking in the coming weeks and the months in my statement. This included actions we're taking collaboratively with partners to increase accommodation capacity by, for example, exploring opportunities such as the establishment of a new national resource. We're also considering effective alternatives to secure care, such as health interventions, to ensure that children and young people can receive the care they need in the setting that most appropriately suits those needs. We're really laying the groundwork now for a resilient, reimagined future for secure care, and equally for the children who will rely on that.
Pauline McNeill, to be followed by Fulton McGregor.
It is concerning that the Minister has said in a statement that we have not yet established a clear agreement on the minimum vacant secure capacity requirement for Scotland at any given time. Now, given there has been a change in the law, which many have welcomed, I want to ask the Minister to be clear about this. What will happen to that young offender who previously would have been in Polmont if, on the day of sentencing, requires to go to a secure place and there are none available? Can I have her cast iron assurance that that young offender will remain in Scotland? But could you tell us what would happen? Thank you.
Minister.
Miss McNeill is dealing with hypotheticals. Now, we were in a situation before Christmas where we had one place in secure care, and I agreed that this was an extremely concerning situation. I have laid out in my statement the actions that were taken to ensure that is not the case. We have increased capacity. If the situation at St Mary's continues to improve, that capacity will continue to increase. And based on the year-to-year data, we have seen reductions in the numbers in secure care, regardless of the changes in legislation this year. So as I say, I don't want to deal with hypotheticals. I want to deal with the situation as it is just now, and I've laid out the action that the Scottish Government has taken in relation to that.
Fulton McGregor, to be followed by Willie Rennie.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Many children and young people in secure care are vulnerable and have faced significant adverse childhood experiences. Can I therefore ask the Minister what the Government is doing to ensure that local authorities can provide intense alternative to care type support services that focus on keeping young people out of secure care and ensuring that it is indeed only ever used as a last resort?
Minister.
Absolutely, and I think, obviously the quality of secure care is extremely important, but, in line with our work to keep the promise, we're also wanting to ensure that we do use alternatives for children and young people, and that we are diverting them when possible to alternatives rather than secure care itself. The Scottish Government, takes a right-based approach to youth justice, and this is reflected in our investment in services and initiatives aimed at addressing the underlying causes of offending and supporting young people in the community. So through funding streams such as Cashback for Communities or the Whole Family Wellbeing Fund. And I've witnessed how transformational whole family interventions have been to families, and undoubtedly the difference that will make in the long term. The Scottish Government also provide ring-fenced funding to all local authorities through the Section 27 grant allocation, which includes alternatives such as diversion from prosecution, bail supervision and electronic monitoring. And I also know that local authorities have their own initiatives, not only to divert, but prevent. And I'm always willing to hear more about any positive initiatives that are going on at that local level.
Thank you, Willie Rennie, to be followed by Kevin Stewart.
I just want to press the Minister further on Martin Whitfield's point, because there is anxiety that those that might need a place on care or welfare grounds might be denied that place because there's insufficient capacity. So what independent processes that are in place, perhaps including the Inspectorate, to make sure that we've got a proper assessment of all these individual cases to make sure that there is capacity for those who need it?
Minister.
Well, as I said, we have our secure care pathways and standards which relate to, what a child or young person should expect either before, during or after they are in secure care. So, that if somebody is there on welfare grounds, then that would be relevant to them. However, I understand what Mr Rennie and Mr Whitfield are saying. They are scared that somebody who requires to be deprived of their liberty would be unable to because of perhaps more people on offence grounds being in secure care. However, as I've said, there are regular conversations between the government, between the different number of partners, between the heads of secure care to ensure that a situation like that does not happen. And I am positive that if there were any moves or there were discussions around that I would absolutely hear about that. That is absolutely not the case. The interests of the child are absolutely at the heart of everything that we're doing, and I would be very disappointed if that was not the case.
Kevin Stewart, to be followed by Sharon Dowie.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I welcome the work the Government has done through the Care and Justice Bill, particularly on ensuring children and young people are not placed in adult institutions. Can the Minister tell us more about the support it has provided to secure providers to help them plan for children moving from young offenders institutions into secure care?
Minister.
Absolutely. There was, as I said, prior to the provisions being put in place, and that was something that we wanted to prioritise because we felt that was I felt that was a very, very important aspect that came out of Children's Care and Justice. bill, and we really moved at pace to ensure that secure care providers were supported to be able to take children from young offenders institutions. I've already spoke to the regular engagement that took place, but there was also funding provided by the Scottish Government to secure care providers to make any necessary changes or adaptations that were required. And, I will continue to listen to secure care providers and any concerns that they might have in light of, that move.
Thank you, Minister. It would be helpful if you addressed the microphone. I know it's counterintuitive when you're speaking to somebody behind you. Sharon Dowie to be followed by Ben McPherson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. My colleague Sue Webber's Stage 3 amendment to the Children Care and Justice Bill, which was agreed by Parliament, ensures that a child is not placed in the same residential establishment as another child who has committed an offence against them or whose behaviour poses a serious risk to their health, safety or development. In light of the Minister's statement, can she confirm whether this vital safeguarding measure is being properly enforced and what action the Scottish Government is taking to ensure it is applied in practice to protect vulnerable children? And could it also, unfortunately, some children need to be in secure care not only for their safety but for that of the public. So could I ask the Minister to clarify again the process of what will happen if and when capacity is reached?
Minister.
Thank you. Member touched on amendments that went through Care and Justice Bill at Stage 3, and the member will be aware that the Government supported those amendments, and that is something that I'm still very supportive of in terms, and I've spoke to that already, I think, in terms of the discussions that take place prior to a child's placement, ensuring that the centre that they are being placed in is adequate for both their needs and for the children around them, and that continues to be the case. Those conversations continue to be had, will continue to be had about any coming placements. I will continue to monitor that. I continue to ask my officials in relation to any issues around that, and I've been assured that there are none. So that continues. I'm sorry, I missed the second point of the question, so if you could follow that up with me in writing, I'd be really grateful.
And Ben McPherson.
In terms of when young people are in secure care as a last resort, I'd be grateful if the Minister could say more about what the Scottish Government is doing to support young people with mental health needs that may not ordinarily be appropriately met in secure care, and what other support is being provided or could be provided that they may need or benefit from.
Minister.
Absolutely. So there are a number of initiatives, I think, that are relevant to this. The Government is developing the National Secure Adolescent Inpatient Service for Scotland, known as Foxgrove, commissioned by the National Services Division. And this will be a medium secure inpatient service for children and young people aged 12 to 18 years with appropriate forensic CAMS needs. And this will open late 2025, will provide 4 beds for young people who require care in an inpatient setting with medium levels of security. We're also providing just under £3.5 million across the West, East and North of Scotland to support the planning and development of regional elements of the the CAMS service specification. And that includes the development of a 4-bed adolescent intensive psychiatric care unit in the west of Scotland and the development of forensic CAMS and intensive home treatment CAMS services and pathways. In addition to this, the Scottish Government is also providing funding of up to £308,000 to the Interventions for Vulnerable Youth, or IVY service based at Kibble. And that's a specialist psychological and social work services offering therapeutic forensic mental health risk assessment and management support to children and young people who present a risk of harm to others. So I could go on. There is more that we are doing, and I could expand on some of this. Again, happy to give the member more information in writing around that, but just to emphasise that that is a priority.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes this item of business. There will be a brief pause before we... Point of order, Martin Whitfield.
I'm very grateful, Deputy Presiding Officer. I seek your guidance on how I can put onto the record that the Minister's statement that this morning there were 3 places available is factually incorrect, and that at 10:46 this morning there were only 2 places available in the vacancies for independent secure centres.
Thank you, Mr Whitfield. I think you've answered your own question. You've put it on the record. It's not a point of order. There will be a brief pause before we move to the next item of business to allow front benches to change.